It started as just another average Tuesday. I was at my desk, barely surviving another workday while daydreaming about the upcoming weekend. My wife, Jessica, had mentioned she'd be busy with some girls' night out plans, which meant I'd have the house to myself. Honestly, I was looking forward to the peace and quiet. Jessica and I hadn't been on the best terms lately. She'd grown increasingly distant, brushing me off whenever I tried to connect or ask how her day went. I chalked it up to stress, or maybe just a rough patch in our marriage. But that afternoon, my world came crashing down. I received a random text message from an unknown number. At first, I thought it was spam, but the message said, "Check your email. You deserve to know the truth." That sent a chill down my spine. I don't know why, but something about those words felt sinister. I hesitated for a moment before opening my email. And there it was, a single email from the same unknown source with a subject line that read, "Jessica, watch this." I hesitated again. My hands were shaking as I hovered over the video attachment in the email. A voice in my head screamed not to open it, but curiosity and dread got the better of me. I clicked play. The video started blurry, but soon came into focus. My heart sank as I recognized the unmistakable figure of my wife, Jessica. She was undressed, lying on a bed in what looked like a cheap motel room. But what made my stomach churn was the scene unfolding. She wasn't alone. A man, someone I didn't recognize, was with her, and they were engaged in something so intimate, so vile, that I felt like I might throw up right there at my desk. The camera angle was deliberate, capturing every humiliating detail. As the video ended, a message appeared across the screen. "If you want more, meet me at these coordinates." Below it were GPS coordinates for a location a few miles outside of town. I froze. My mind raced with questions. Who sent this? Why would someone record my wife? And most of all, why would they send it to me? I felt my chest tighten as if the walls were closing in around me. My coworkers bustled in the background, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. I couldn't sit still. I forwarded the email to myself and left work early, mumbling some excuse about not feeling well. The drive home felt like it lasted forever. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, betrayal, confusion, humiliation. When I got home, Jessica was in the kitchen, acting as if everything was perfectly normal. She smiled at me, asked how my day was, and went back to slicing vegetables for dinner. The sight of her being so casual, so unaffected, made me sick. How could she act like this after what I just saw? Did she think I'd never find out? I wanted to confront her right then and there, but something held me back. I needed more answers. I needed to understand what I was dealing with before I said a word. So, I kept quiet. I mumbled a weak response, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and went to the bedroom to lie down. Instead, I sat on the bed, replaying the video on my phone, studying every frame. The man with her wasn't anyone I recognized, but there was something about the setting, the way it was filmed, that felt deliberate. It wasn't just a random recording. Someone wanted me to see this. Someone wanted me to hurt. Then I remembered the coordinates. I opened the GPS app on my phone and plugged them in. The location was an abandoned industrial park on the outskirts of town. My first instinct was to drive there immediately, but fear held me back. What if it was a trap? What if whoever sent this wanted more than just to expose Jessica's affair? My mind spiraled into worst-case scenarios, but I couldn't ignore it. I had to go. Before I left, I wrote a note to myself on a piece of paper and stuck it in my desk drawer. If anything happens to me, Jessica knows more than she's saying. With that, I grabbed my keys and headed out. The video still burned into my memory. My heart pounded as I drove toward the coordinates, knowing that whatever I found there would change my life forever. The drive to the coordinates was eerily quiet, with only the sound of my car engine humming in the background. I couldn't bring myself to turn on the radio. It felt wrong, like I needed to give my full attention to the weight of what I was about to face. The sky was overcast, and a light drizzle began to blur my windshield. It mirrored my state of mind, murky and chaotic. The GPS led me down a series of winding roads until I arrived at an abandoned industrial park. The place was a graveyard of rusted machinery, cracked concrete, and graffiti-covered walls. It looked like the kind of place where bad things happened. My palms were sweaty as I parked the car and killed the engine. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the desolation in front of me. I couldn't help but wonder if I was being stupid. What if this was some elaborate prank? Or worse, a setup? Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car and pulled my jacket tighter around me. The air was damp and heavy, and every sound seemed amplified. The crunch of gravel beneath my shoes, the distant caw of a crow, the rustle of the wind. I followed the GPS on my phone, which pointed me toward one of the larger, more dilapidated buildings. My stomach churned as I approached the entrance. The door was slightly ajar, and inside, I could see a faint glow, like a small, flickering light. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaky and unconvincing. No response. Against my better judgment, I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air was musty and cold, filled with the smell of mildew and decay. The light I'd seen was coming from a laptop placed on an old, dusty table in the center of the room. It felt like a scene straight out of a crime thriller. I approached the laptop cautiously, half expecting someone to jump out at me. The screen was on, displaying another video. My throat went dry as I hesitated to press play. Part of me wanted to turn around and leave, but I knew I couldn't. Whatever was on that laptop, I needed to see it. I clicked play. The video began with Jessica again, but this time, it was different. She was sitting on the same motel bed, wearing nothing but a silk robe. Her tone was playful, almost mocking, as she spoke directly to the camera. "So, you found this, huh? I guess that means you're paying attention for once," she said with a smirk. "Don't act so surprised. You had to know things weren't perfect between us. I mean, come on. When was the last time you made me feel special? When was the last time you even noticed me?" I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Was she serious? Was she trying to blame me for this? My hands clenched into fists as I continued watching. The video cut to another scene. Jessica with the same man from the first video. Only this time, they weren't alone. There was a second man, someone else I didn't recognize, and the three of them were laughing and drinking. It felt like a slap in the face, a deliberate attempt to humiliate me further. At the end of the video, a message appeared on the screen. "Want to know the full story? Be at this address tomorrow night. Come alone." The address was a house across town, not far from where Jessica and I lived. My mind was racing. Who was orchestrating all of this? Jessica clearly knew about the videos, but was she the one sending them? Or was someone else pulling the strings? I closed the laptop and looked around the room, half expecting someone to be watching me. But there was no one. The place was as empty and lifeless as it had seemed from the outside. I grabbed the laptop, deciding to take it with me as evidence, and hurried back to my car. Every nerve in my body was on edge as I drove home, glancing in the rearview mirror every few seconds to make sure I wasn't being followed. When I got back to the house, Jessica was in the living room, scrolling through her phone like nothing was wrong. She didn't even glance up when I walked in. My mind was a swirling storm of questions, but I couldn't confront her yet. Not until I knew more. I locked the laptop in my office and went to bed early, pretending I had a headache. Jessica didn't seem to care. She just mumbled something about me being moody and stayed downstairs. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't help but wonder how long this had been going on. How many lies had she told? How many nights had I been sitting at home, clueless, while she was off doing this? Sleep didn't come easily that night. My mind replayed the videos over and over again, tormenting me with images I couldn't unsee. And then there was the address. Whoever sent that message wanted me there for a reason. I didn't know what I'd find, but one thing was certain. My life was unraveling, and the worst was yet to come. The next day dragged on like an eternity. I barely made it through work, my mind consumed by the events of the night before. Every time I tried to focus on a task, the memory of those videos would creep back in, gnawing at me. Jessica had been her usual self that morning, cheerful, almost annoyingly so. She even kissed me on the cheek as I left for work, as if nothing was wrong. It made my skin crawl. The address burned in my mind like a beacon of dread and curiosity. I kept replaying the video in my head, Jessica's mocking tone, her dismissive words. How could she sit there and put the blame on me? How could she act like she wasn't tearing my heart out and stomping on it? When the clock finally hit 5 p.m., I practically sprinted out of the office. I didn't even bother with excuses. My coworkers probably thought I was losing it, and honestly, they wouldn't be wrong. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly on the drive home that my knuckles turned white. I had a plan, or at least I thought I did. I would show up at the address, confront whoever was behind this, and demand answers. Jessica was still at home when I arrived. She was getting ready for her so-called girls' night out, curling her hair in front of the bathroom mirror. Her reflection caught mine in the glass as I stood in the doorway. "You're home early," she said casually, not even turning to face me. "Yeah, wasn't feeling great," I replied, my voice hollow. She gave me a quick glance, her eyes scanning me for any sign of suspicion, but I must have passed whatever test she had in mind because she just shrugged and went back to fixing her hair. I didn't say another word as I grabbed my car keys and left. The less interaction we had, the better. The drive to the address felt like stepping into a nightmare. The sun was setting, casting long, eerie shadows across the city. My GPS guided me to a quiet, upscale neighborhood. One of those places where the lawns are perfectly manicured and the houses look like something out of a magazine. I parked a few houses down from the address, not wanting to draw attention to myself. The house itself was unremarkable. 2 stories, white picket fence, a bright red door. It could have belonged to anyone, but as I approached, I noticed something odd. The lights were off and the curtains were drawn. It didn't look like anyone was home. I hesitated on the front porch, my finger hovering over the doorbell. What if this was a trap? What if someone was waiting inside, ready to jump me the second I walked in? My paranoia was at an all-time high, but I couldn't turn back now. I pressed the doorbell, and the chime echoed through the house. Nothing. I waited a few seconds, then knocked on the door. Still nothing. Frustrated, I tried the handle, and to my surprise, the door swung open. My heart pounded as I stepped inside. The air was heavy, and the faint smell of cigarettes lingered in the hallway. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. No response. The house was eerily silent, save for the creak of the floorboards beneath my feet. I moved cautiously, peering into each room as I made my way down the hallway. The living room was immaculate, like it had been staged for a real estate listing. The kitchen was spotless, not a single dish out of place. It didn't feel like anyone actually lived here. Then I saw it, a small envelope sitting on the dining table, my name scrawled across the front in bold, black letters. My stomach twisted as I picked it up and tore it open. Inside was a single piece of paper with a message written in the same handwriting. "You're not ready for the truth yet, but you're getting close. Keep watching." My blood ran cold. Who was doing this to me? Why were they toying with me like this? I crumpled the note in my fist, my frustration boiling over. I wanted to scream, to tear the place apart, but I knew that wouldn't get me any closer to the answers I needed. As I turned to leave, something on the counter caught my eye. A tablet, its screen glowing faintly in the dim light. I hesitated for a moment before picking it up. The screen displayed a single video file, labeled Play Me. I knew better than to trust this, but my curiosity got the better of me. I tapped the screen, and the video began to play. This time, it wasn't Jessica. It was the man from the first video, the one she'd been with. He was sitting in the same motel room, a smug grin plastered across his face. "So, you found the house," he said, his tone mocking. "Good. You're more determined than I thought. But if you really want to understand what's going on, you're going to have to work for it." The video cut to a close-up of an envelope with yet another address written on it. The camera zoomed in, holding on the address for several seconds before the screen went black. I clenched my jaw, my frustration boiling over. How much longer was this going to go on? How many more breadcrumbs would I have to follow before I got to the truth? I pocketed the tablet and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind me. As I drove to the next location, a million thoughts raced through my mind. Was Jessica in on this? Was this her twisted idea of a joke? Or was someone else pulling the strings, using her to hurt me? I didn't have the answers yet, but one thing was clear. Whoever was behind this wanted to break me, and they were doing a damn good job of it. The new address led me to a part of town I rarely visited, an industrial zone filled with warehouses and loading docks. The kind of place where nobody asked questions if something shady was happening. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as I approached the location. The warehouse loomed in the distance, its silhouette dark and foreboding against the night sky. My phone's GPS confirmed I was in the right place, but everything about this screamed danger. The gate to the warehouse was ajar, hanging loosely on its hinges, creaking with every gust of wind. The darkness inside the lot felt impenetrable. My headlights barely illuminated the path ahead, but I didn't dare turn them off. I pulled into the lot and parked, leaving the engine running just in case I needed to make a quick escape. As I stepped out of the car, I immediately felt exposed. The air was cold and damp, carrying a faint metallic tang that I couldn't quite place. Every step I took toward the warehouse in trance echoed in the stillness, amplifying my anxiety. The door was slightly open, as if inviting me in. Against my better judgment, I pushed it further and stepped inside. The interior was cavernous, with high ceilings and rows of shelves stacked with dusty, forgotten boxes. A faint light flickered in the distance, drawing me toward it like a moth to a flame. My footsteps felt impossibly loud on the concrete floor, each one a reminder that I was utterly alone in this place. Or so I thought. As I approached the light, I saw another table set up in the middle of the room. On it was a laptop, just like the one I had found at the first location. But this time, there was something else, a bottle of whiskey, 2 glasses, and a handwritten note that read, "You might need a drink for this." I ignored the whiskey, though the temptation was strong. My nerves were already frayed, and I didn't trust anything in this setup. Instead, I sat down in the chair placed in front of the laptop and opened the lid. The screen lit up, revealing yet another video file labeled "Play Me, the Truth." With a deep breath, I clicked play. This time, the video didn't start with Jessica or the man she'd been with. Instead, it showed a collection of photos, Jessica and me at our wedding, on vacations, at family gatherings. Each photo lingered for a moment before transitioning to the next, creating a painful montage of our life together. It felt like someone was trying to remind me of everything I was about to lose, or maybe they were mocking me for being too blind to see the cracks. Then the photos stopped, and the screen went black. A voice I didn't recognize broke the silence. "You think you know your wife," the voice said, cold and detached. "But you don't. You've never known her." The screen lit up again, showing a new video of Jessica. She was sitting in the same motel room, looking directly at the camera. Her demeanor was different this time. Less smug, more serious, almost apologetic. "If you're watching this, it means you've followed the trail," she began. "Good. That means you're finally ready to hear the truth." I leaned closer, my heart pounding in my chest. What was she about to say? "I didn't want it to come to this," she continued, "but you left me no choice. You've been so wrapped up in your own little world. Your work, your routines, your stupid hobbies, that you didn't notice when I started slipping away. And honestly, I don't regret it. I found someone, that makes me feel alive again." Her words hit me like a freight train. I wanted to scream, to smash the laptop, but I couldn't look away. "The man you saw in the videos? He's not just some random guy. He's someone who understands me, who listens to me, who makes me feel things you never could. And as for the person sending you these messages, let's just say they're on my side." The screen cut to black again, leaving me sitting there in stunned silence. I could feel the rage building inside me, mixing with a deep, suffocating sadness. This wasn't just an affair. It was a calculated betrayal, orchestrated to break me piece by piece. I slammed the laptop shut and stood up, my breathing heavy and erratic. I needed answers, but more than that, I needed to know who else was involved in this sick game. Who was helping Jessica, and why? As I turned to leave, I heard a sound, a faint shuffle coming from somewhere in the warehouse. I froze, every muscle in my body tensing. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice echoing in the empty space. No response. I grabbed a rusty metal pipe lying nearby, holding it tightly as I scanned the room. The sound came again, this time closer. My heart felt like it might explode as I moved toward the source of the noise. Then I saw him. A man stepped out from behind one of the shelves, his face partially obscured by a hood. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried himself with an air of confidence that made my blood boil. It was him, The man from the videos? Jessica's lover. You're late, he said, his voice calm and condescending. I thought you'd get here sooner. I gripped the pipe tighter, my knuckles turning white. You've got 5 seconds to tell me what the hell is going on, I growled. He chuckled, shaking his head. Oh, you still don't get it, do you? This isn't about you. It's about her. Jessica wanted you to know. She wanted you to see what she's been doing because she's done pretending. Pretending what? I snapped. Pretending to love you, he said bluntly. You were just a placeholder. A means to an end. But don't take it personally. She says you're a nice guy. Just boring. That was it. The final straw. I lunged at him, swinging the pipe with all my strength, but he was quicker. He sidestepped me with ease, his smug grin never faltering. Easy there, he said, holding up his hands. You're going to need your energy for what comes next. Before I could respond, he threw something on the ground, a small object that emitted a blinding flash of light. By the time my vision cleared, he was gone, leaving me alone in the dark warehouse, more confused and furious than ever. I stumbled out of the warehouse, my head spinning and my heart pounding. The adrenaline coursing through my veins made it impossible to think straight. The man's words echoed in my mind, taunting me, each one sharper than the last. Placeholder. Boring. Was that all I'd been to Jessica? After years of marriage, after everything we'd built together, was I just a convenient piece in her game? I drove aimlessly for what felt like hours, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my fingers began to ache. The streets blurred past me, a haze of headlights and shadows, but I didn't care where I was going. All I knew was that I couldn't go home. Not yet. Facing Jessica felt impossible right now. Every time I pictured her face, that smug expression she wore in the videos, I felt like I might explode. Eventually, I pulled into the parking lot of a dingy diner on the edge of town. The neon sign flickered, casting an eerie glow over the cracked asphalt. I needed time to think, to piece together everything that had happened. Sliding into a corner booth, I ordered a coffee and stared at the steaming cup as if it held the answers I was looking for. My phone buzzed on the table, snapping me out of my trance. Another email had come through. My stomach churned as I opened it, dreading what I might find. The subject line read, "Final instructions." The email contained only a short message. It's time to end this. Go home. Everything will be waiting for you there. Home. The last place I wanted to be. But I couldn't ignore it. Whoever was orchestrating this nightmare clearly had control over the situation. Running wouldn't solve anything. I tossed a few crumpled bills onto the table and walked back to my car, my mind racing. What did they mean by everything? Was this some kind of trap? Was Jessica in on this? The questions piled up, each one heavier than the last. When I finally pulled into the driveway, the house was dark, save for a single light glowing in the living room window. My stomach twisted with unease as I killed the engine and stepped out of the car. The air was deathly still, the kind of silence that made every creak and shuffle feel like a thunderclap. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside, my pulse racing. The living room was empty, but the coffee table was littered with papers, and a small box sat in the center. Jessica was nowhere to be seen. I approached the table cautiously, my eyes scanning the documents. Divorce papers. Every page was neatly signed, her handwriting unmistakable. The box drew my attention next. It was plain and unmarked, but something about it felt ominous. I hesitated before opening it, bracing myself for whatever fresh hell awaited me. Inside was a USB drive and a note that read, "Watch me." I sank into the couch, my legs trembling as I plugged the USB into my laptop. The video that appeared was different from the others. It wasn't filmed in a motel or some shadowy location. It was filmed right here, in my own home. Jessica was sitting on our bed, looking straight into the camera. Her face was unreadable, a mix of defiance and something I couldn't quite place. Maybe guilt? "If you're watching this, then you know everything," she began. Her voice was calm, almost cold. "I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I've been unhappy for a long time. And yes, I've been seeing someone else. But you already know that, don't you? You've seen the videos, heard the words. There's no point in denying it." I clenched my fists, my jaw tightening as she continued. I know you're angry. I know you probably hate me right now. But you need to understand something. This wasn't just about me. It was about you too. About us. We've been stuck in this routine. This life that feels more like a chore than a marriage. And honestly, I think you've known it for a while. Her tone shifted then, growing sharper. You're probably wondering who's been sending you all these messages, who's been playing this little game. Well, the answer is simple. It was me. I wanted you to see what I've been dealing with, to feel the frustration and emptiness that I've been feeling for years. And if this is what it takes to make you wake up, then so be it. My breath caught in my throat. She was behind everything? The videos, the messages, the locations. It was all her? I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. How could she do this to me? How could she manipulate me so cruelly? The video ended abruptly, leaving me staring at the blank screen. My head was spinning, a whirlwind of anger, confusion, and heartbreak. I wanted to scream, to break something, but all I could do was sit there, frozen in place. And then I heard it, a sound coming from upstairs. Footsteps, slow and deliberate. My blood ran cold as I realized I wasn't alone. Jessica was here. I stood up, my legs shaking as I made my way toward the stairs. Each step felt heavier than the last, the air thick with tension. When I reached the top, I saw her standing in the hallway, her arms crossed and an unreadable expression on her face. "Well," she said, her voice calm but laced with defiance. "What are you going to do now?" I stood there at the top of the stairs, staring at Jessica. She was calm, too calm. Her arms were crossed, and her expression was almost challenging, like she was daring me to say something. My mind raced, trying to make sense of everything I had just seen and heard. My chest tightened with anger, betrayal, and a strange sense of helplessness. What am I going to do? I repeated, my voice trembling. "You really have the nerve to ask me that?" She raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a faint smirk. "You wanted the truth, didn't you? Well, now you have it." I clenched my fists, trying to hold back the rage bubbling inside me. "You're unbelievable, Jessica. You didn't just cheat on me. You orchestrated this whole sick game. Sent me videos, dragged me to random places, humiliated me. For what? To make me feel like crap? To punish me for something I didn't even know I did?" She sighed, shaking her head as if I were some naive child who just didn't get it. "You think this is just about the cheating? It's not. This is about everything you've ignored for years. The way you've ignored me. You go to work, come home, sit on the couch, and act like that's enough. Like I'm enough for you to even try. Are you kidding me?" I snapped, my voice louder now. "So this is my fault? You're blaming me for your choices? You could have talked to me, Jessica. We could have worked on this together. But instead, you decided to destroy me." Her smirk faded, replaced by something harder, colder. "You don't get it, do you? I tried to talk to you. I tried for years, but you were never there. You were too busy living in your own little world to see what was happening in front of you. So yeah, I did what I had to do. And honestly, I don't regret it." Her words felt like knives slicing through me, each one deeper than the last. My hands shook as I fought to keep my composure. "You don't regret it? Not even a little? You don't regret what you've done to me? To us?" She shrugged, her expression cold and unflinching. "What's there to regret? I finally did something for myself, something that made me happy. I couldn't take it anymore." I turned away from her, pacing back and forth in the hallway, trying to process the depth of her betrayal. "You're twisted," I muttered, more to myself than to her. "You're absolutely twisted." "Maybe," she said, her voice softer now, "but I'm honest. Can you say the same? Or have you been lying to yourself about how perfect everything was between us?" I stopped pacing and turned to face her. "Perfect? No. But I thought we were a team. I thought we'd get through anything together. Clearly, I was wrong." For the first time, her confidence wavered. She looked away, her arms uncrossing as she shifted uncomfortably. "You don't understand," she said quietly. "You never did." "Then make me understand," I said, my voice raw with emotion. "Explain to me how you could do this, how you could look me in the eye every day, knowing what you were doing behind my back." She hesitated, her lips pressing into a thin line. For a moment, I thought she might actually open up, might finally tell me the truth. But then she shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. You wouldn't believe me even if I told you. Try me, I said, my voice firm. She looked at me then, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Guilt? Regret? Or was it just another layer of her manipulation? It wasn't just about the affair, she said finally. It was about freedom, about feeling alive again. And yes, it was about you. About making you see what I've been dealing with all this time. And the videos? I asked, my voice shaking. The messages? The man in the warehouse? Was that part of your freedom too? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned and walked down the hallway, her steps slow and deliberate. Come with me, she said over her shoulder. I hesitated, unsure whether to follow her. But curiosity and the need for answers pushed me forward. She led me into the bedroom, where she opened the closet and pulled out a small, locked box. From inside, she retrieved a thick envelope and handed it to me. What's this? I asked, my brow furrowing. Open it, she said simply. I tore the envelope open and pulled out its contents, photos, receipts, and what looked like a series of legal documents. My hands trembled as I flipped through them, my confusion growing with every page. The photos were of Jessica with the man from the videos, but there were also others, pictures of them with someone else, a third person I didn't recognize. The receipts were for expensive dinners, hotel stays, and even plane tickets. And the legal documents, they were drafts of divorce papers, dated months ago. You were planning this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. This wasn't just an affair. This was your escape plan. She didn't deny it. Instead, she sat down on the edge of the bed, her expression unreadable. I was tired of waiting for things to change. I was tired of waiting for you to change. I felt like the floor was collapsing beneath me. All this time, I thought we were just going through a rough patch. I thought we could fix things if we just tried hard enough. But Jessica had been planning her exit for months, maybe even longer. What were you waiting for? I asked, my voice breaking. For me to catch you? For me to fall apart? She looked up at me then, her eyes cold and unfeeling. I was waiting for the right moment, but you were too blind to see it. Her words hit me like a sledgehammer. I couldn't speak, couldn't think. All I could do was stand there, clutching the envelope, as the weight of her betrayal crushed me. And then, as if to twist the knife even further, she said the words that broke me completely. It's over, Tom. It's been over for a long time. You just didn't want to admit it. I couldn't respond. Her words echoed in my head like a deafening roar. It's over. My hands trembled as I held the envelope, the damning evidence of everything I'd been too blind, or too trusting, to see. Jessica just sat there on the bed, calm, almost bored, as if she'd just finished a tedious chore and was waiting for me to leave. You don't even care, do you? I finally managed to say, my voice raw. You don't care that you've destroyed everything we built, that you've destroyed, she interrupted, raising an eyebrow. Tom, stop acting like this is some fairy tale that I've ruined. Our marriage was dead long before this. You just didn't want to admit it. You think this is how you fix things? I snapped, my voice rising. By sneaking around, lying and humiliating me? By turning this into some kind of sick game? She sighed, standing up and crossing her arms. You're missing the point. This wasn't about fixing anything. This was about ending it. And yeah, maybe I could have done it differently, but let's not pretend you're some innocent victim here. You checked out of this marriage years ago. Her words hit me like a slap in the face. Was that true? Had I really been so blind to what was happening around me? No, this wasn't my fault. It couldn't be. I tried. I'd worked hard to provide for us, to give her the life she wanted. But apparently, that wasn't enough. I gave you everything, I said, my voice shaking. I gave you my time, my energy, my love. And this is how you repay me? She rolled her eyes, her expression cold. Stop being so dramatic, Tom. You make it sound like I owe you something. You're my wife. I shouted, unable to contain my anger any longer. You made a commitment to me, to us. You don't just walk away because things get hard. Jessica laughed bitterly. You really don't get it, do you? This wasn't just about things getting hard. This was about me being miserable, about feeling like I was invisible in my own life. And you? You were too busy feeling sorry for yourself to notice. I opened my mouth to respond, but the words wouldn't come. She was twisting everything, rewriting our entire history to justify her betrayal. I wanted to argue, to fight back, but the weight of her words crushed me. I can't do this, I muttered, turning away. I can't be here right now. Fine, she said simply. Go. I grabbed my car keys and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind me. The cool night air hit me like a slap in the face, but it did little to calm the storm inside me. I got in the car and drove, not caring where I was going, just needing to get away. The streets were dark and quiet, but my mind was anything but. Every word Jessica had said replayed in my head, each one cutting deeper than the last. How had we gotten here? How had everything fallen apart so completely? I ended up at a park on the edge of town, the kind of place we used to go to when we were first dating. Back then, things were so simple. We'd sit on the swings, talk about our dreams, and laugh about nothing in particular. I parked the car and sat there, staring at the empty playground, feeling the crushing weight of everything I'd lost. My phone buzzed, pulling me out of my thoughts. Another email. My stomach twisted as I opened it, half expecting another video or message designed to torment me further. But this one was different. The subject line read, "Do you want the whole truth?" The message contained a single sentence. "If you're ready, meet me here," followed by a new set of coordinates. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. Was this another one of Jessica's games? Or was it someone else, someone who knew more than they were letting on? I didn't know what to believe anymore, but I couldn't ignore it. I needed answers. The drive to the new location felt like a blur. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as I navigated the empty streets, the GPS guiding me to another unfamiliar part of town. This time, it led me to an old, run-down motel. The neon sign buzzed faintly, casting an eerie glow over the parking lot. I parked the car and sat there for a moment, staring at the motel. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to turn around, to leave this nightmare behind and never look back. But I couldn't. I needed to know. I needed closure. The room number was included in the email. Room 207. I climbed the creaking stairs, my heart pounding with each step. When I reached the door, I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob. Was I ready for this? Could I handle whatever was waiting for me on the other side? Before I could decide, the door creaked open, and I was face to face with the man from the videos, Jessica's lover. He stood there, a smug grin on his face, as if he'd been expecting me. "Tom," he said, his tone dripping with mockery. Right on time. I clenched my fists, barely holding back the urge to punch him. "What the hell do you want?" I growled. "Relax," he said, stepping aside to let me in. "I think it's time you heard the full story." I hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. The room was dimly lit, with a small table and 2 chairs in the center. On the table was a laptop, its screen glowing faintly. The man gestured for me to sit, but I stayed standing, my eyes fixed on him. "Where's Jessica?" I demanded. "She's not here," he said casually, leaning against the wall. "But don't worry, this isn't about her anymore. This is about you." "Me?" I asked, my voice dripping with disbelief. "What the hell are you talking about?" He smirked, picking up the laptop and placing it on the table. "Sit down, Tom. You're going to want to see this." I didn't sit down. My legs felt too unsteady, and the air in the room was thick with tension. Jessica's lover, or whoever this smug bastard thought he was, stared at me like he had all the power in the world. I hated him for it. My jaw clenched as I repeated, "What the hell is this about?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he casually opened the laptop and tapped a few keys. The screen lit up with a video paused at the beginning. "You've been chasing answers, Tom," he said, his voice smooth and patronizing. "Now it's time to get them." I crossed my arms, trying to appear more confident than I felt. "You think I care about anything you have to say?" You're just a leech feeding off my wife's lies. His smirk deepened, and he leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. You really think this is just about Jessica? Oh, Tom, you poor, clueless man. This goes way deeper than you realize. What are you talking about? I snapped, my patience wearing thin. He gestured to the laptop. Sit. Watch. Then you'll understand. Reluctantly, I lowered myself into the chair, my heart pounding as I stared at the screen. With a click of the mouse, the video began to play. At first, it seemed like just another recording of Jessica. She was in the same motel room, looking directly at the camera. But something about her demeanor was different this time. She wasn't mocking or dismissive. She looked nervous, almost scared. Tom, she began, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it in these videos. If you're watching this, it means you've made it to the end. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. I blinked, confused. Sorry? That wasn't like her. What was going on? I know you probably hate me right now, she continued. And I don't blame you. But there are things you don't know, things I didn't know how to tell you. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. Her eyes darted off camera, and for a moment, I thought she was about to cry. But she quickly composed herself and looked back at the lens. You need to know the truth, Tom. About me. About us. About why this happened. It wasn't just the cheating. It wasn't just me feeling neglected. There's more to it than that. The screen cut to black, and then new footage began to play. It wasn't Jessica this time. It was him, the man standing across from me. He was sitting in the same room, a smug grin on his face as he spoke directly to the camera. Tom, buddy, he said, his tone dripping with mockery. If you've made it this far, congratulations. You've passed the test. Now it's time for the truth. I glanced up at him, anger bubbling beneath my skin. What truth? I growled. Keep watching, he said, motioning to the screen. The video continued, showing a series of photos and documents. I recognized some of them, Jessica's legal papers, the receipts from the envelope, but others were new. Bank statements, contracts, emails. My stomach churned as I realized what I was looking at. Do you see it yet? The man in the video asked. Do you see what she's been planning? This wasn't just about an affair, Tom. This was a takeover. Jessica didn't just want to leave you. She wanted to destroy you. The screen filled with more documents, this time showing transfers from my personal bank account to a joint account I didn't recognize. The amounts were staggering, tens of thousands of dollars, siphoned away without my knowledge. You trusted her, the man continued, his tone almost pitying, and she used that trust to bleed you dry. Every dinner, every hotel stay, every little luxury, they were all paid for with your money. And now? Now she's ready to cash out? I felt like I was going to be sick. The betrayal hit me like a freight train, heavier than anything I'd felt before. Jessica hadn't just cheated on me. She'd robbed me. She'd stolen from me, right under my nose, and I hadn't even noticed. She's planning to leave the country, you know, the man said in the video. A fresh start with me and all that money. But hey, don't feel too bad. At least you get to keep the house. For now. The screen cut to black, and I sat there, frozen. My hands trembled as I gripped the edge of the table, my mind racing with questions and rage. Jessica had been planning this for months, maybe even years, and I had been too blind, too trusting, to see it. I turned to the man, my voice barely more than a growl. Why are you telling me this? If you're in on it, why not just let her get away with it? He leaned back against the wall, his smirk fading slightly. Because, Tom, I'm not as loyal as she thinks. Let's just say I'm not interested in sharing. I stared at him, trying to process his words. Was this all some twisted power play? Had he betrayed Jessica to save his own skin? What do you want from me? I asked, my voice hollow. I want you to know the truth, he said simply. What you do with it is up to you. But if I were you, I'd make sure she doesn't get away with it. I stood up, my legs shaking beneath me. I need to go, I muttered, heading for the door. He didn't stop me. As I left the motel, the weight of everything crashed down on me. My marriage was over. My wife had betrayed me in every way imaginable. And now, I had a choice to make. Was I going to let her get away with it?